really delighted to have Deborah Goldman with us this afternoon, one of our fine artists, who has an exhibition coming up at Lucky Street, and she agreed to take a break from her work and share some of the pieces for the upcoming exhibition with us, and talk to us a little bit about how she came to be an artist and how she came all the way to this exhibition. So, Deborah.
It's been a haul. It's been a long haul. And I started with very dirty hands, making pottery. And I think rolling hundreds of balls of clay to make teacups for mass merchandise got me in the process of repetitive action and enabled me to see how calming it was.
How old were you then?
20s.
Okay.
A long time ago.
Was that your first job?
No, I worked as a secretary for an architect during high school.
All that stuff.
But yeah. But anyway, so the whole idea of serial imagery was something that came naturally to me. As a potter, you're always duplicating a form. But what I've learned over time is the interest that comes from looking closely enough to see what the differences are between each form. And part of the kind of work that I do requires observation all the time. If you look here, you might feel that you're looking at things that are the same. But if you take a closer look, you'll recognize that here's one daffodil, 2, 3, and 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5. So there's a counting process, which is also interesting to me as a metaphor for the passage of time. And I'm at the stage in my life where I'm aware of the process of life, that things are being born, flourishing, and then they are in decline, and it's a very ephemeral, transient life that we live. And so I look to find exactly what's the most beautiful at any particular stage along the way, including now.
Well, I noticed that you've got some poetry on the back of the images, or...
Well, it looks like poetry, but actually I started this process because I read somewhere, I don't remember where, directions for how to make dried floral arrangements. And they were very precise, they were numbered, and they were inane. But I was struck by how one could, going to look for help for how to make floral arrangements, follow these directions. So I started working with dried flowers that I was able to buy in mass quantity on eBay. It was amazing, brilliant colors, blah, blah. But then I had these particular daffodils that someone had given me last year, and I love watching daffodils, tulips, any flowers in their process. And in fact, I think they're more beautiful sometimes as they start to fade. What the words here, and I'm glad that you called it poetry, say is a different list of instructions about doing dried floral arrangements. It says flowers or leaves for drying may be collected any time during the growing season from early spring until late fall. Always collect more material than needed to allow for damage. Use only the most perfect forms. Poor shapes dry as poor shapes. Well, I mean, for me, there's a great deal of humor in here, but also you never have to read it. It's just a vessel that holds the flower. It's a contrast between the flower itself and the color on the back of the page, and it's also referring to botanical illustrations, where this script, which is called Edwardian, is something that was used on botanical prints in the 19th century, 17th century, 16th century, no, maybe not 16th, but the work has a more conceptual basis than a high-skilled photography interest. It's not what I'm about. I use the camera to document the idea that I'm trying to convey at any particular time. So they are more about an idea, and I don't modify them particularly. I don't use Photoshop. They're very simple, direct images. I do get the daffodils to model, and I sometimes ask them to turn, but I don't do much work in the camera because I'm really a primitive in terms of the photographic expertise.
So it's a documentation of the process then for you.
Bill King was an artist who I knew when I was in graduate school. He made wonderful sculpture that was very much his own kind of sculpture. He'd studied with Eli Nadelman, and so he was trained as a classic sculptor, but he ended up making figurative pieces, some of which were, 18, 20 foot tall and flat, like cutouts. And he also made some out of vinyl. And I loved what he was doing. There was an element of humor in it, and it really felt very much Bill King. He was also tall and skinny. And he said to me, forget about fame. Just really try to dig deep and find out what really excites you and how you can share that with people and what might excite them as well. So I gave up fame for flowers, and I've been working with flowers and garden concepts ever since.